Good morning, Chairman Allen, council members. I do appreciate the council members who have come here this morning, and my heart goes out, of course, to Council Member Janice Lewis George and her ward in light of the happenings of this morning. Also, good morning to district residents. My name is Carl Racine, and I have the privilege of serving as the independent Attorney General of the District of Columbia. As you know, this oversight hearing will be my last as Attorney General. And as a point of personal privilege, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your extraordinary and always thorough work, partnership, and yes, what people may not see every day, constructive criticism from you, Kate Mitchell, and others in your office. It is an honor to testify before this committee about the work of the Office of Attorney General, and to be honest, more so about the incredible colleagues, lawyers, and professionals who you've heard today described by DC residents. They give their all every day to make the district a more fair, just, and safe city. And I want to thank our residents for the opportunity to have allowed me to serve them. Let me thank also the public witnesses today whose feedback I'd like to briefly comment on. Ms. Barnwell from Congress Heights personifies something awful that has permitted to go on for too long in the District of Columbia. Displacement of Black, brown, senior, and residents who are subject to being disabled or otherwise suffer a physical or mental disability. Displacement also impacts white folks in the District of Columbia who are not wealthy. And we need more action on displacement. And the kind of action that the Office of Attorney General has instituted, honestly, isn't enough to stop the tide of displacement. In fact, if the District of Columbia really wanted to care about displacement, it would do things very differently than it has the last 20 years. Because there is no other city in America that has suffered a higher degree of displacement of Black, brown, senior, poor, and individuals subject to disability than the District of Columbia. So thank God for my colleagues at the Office of Attorney General, those pro bono lawyers, the tenant advocates that would dare to stop highly connected political contributors who end up benefiting from the business practice that is slumlords. So I want to thank Ms. Barnwell for having the courage to stand up to power. Thank you, Ms. Barnwell. I want to also speak out to my friends who practice in the area of protecting seniors. And that is, where's my witness list? Here it is. That is Mr. Randy Smith and Jeff Gordon. They represent a group of people who literally aren't making that much money, but they're practicing with their heart and their souls. Why? To protect the seniors who are exploited. And I believe we had a question, perhaps it was from Council Member Henderson, who wanted to know what the scope of the problem around senior exploitation is. Madam Council Member, the Adult Protective Services produces an annual report, and that report shows that over the last 4 years, the reports of financial exploitation and other exploitation of seniors has skyrocketed 3.5-fold, and it makes sense. Our demographics are changing. People are getting older. There's more insecurity. There's more people, in short, taking advantage of seniors who get a check every 2 weeks because they earned it. And thank God for my colleagues and others who would dare to protect seniors and their very precious resources that are contained in their bank accounts, their purses, and their wallets. Carolyn Bear and Yolara Ramos from Legal Aid. Let me tell you something. Legal Aid, God bless Legal Aid. No agency is more critical of the Office of Attorney General legitimately than Legal Aid. They've been a partner in making us better. It hurts to receive criticism. The defensiveness of us wants to say, well, that's unfair. The maturity and the selflessness in us says, let's work together to get better. Thank you, Legal Aid. We're still not there yet. We need to do more to tackle that backlog. We'll give you precision on that. Thank goodness for pushing us on paternity and errors in paternity. And on the language access piece, we are trying as best we can with your help to catch up to where we need to be. Not a perfect agency. Thank God for constructive critics like Legal Aid. Court's indulgence. Danielle Robinette from Children's Law Center pushed us to do more in housing, pushed us to focus on the environmental dangers that people of color, poor people face in the District of Columbia. Council members, fair question to you. How many licensed mold and lead inspectors does the District of Columbia government have on its payroll? A rich city like ours, I'm going to tell you the truth, should have many, many, many more, because kids and lead is a toxic danger that never improves. It impacts one's cognitive function. Thank you for pushing us. And let me tell you, we're going hard against landlords, property managers, well-heeled developers, no matter who they contribute to, who allow kids to be right near lead. Matthew Ornstein, and I gotta say Bridget Stump from NVRDC, that's a victims' rights group that supports restorative justice. Why? As you will hear, restorative justice is not a get out of jail card. It's not being soft on crime. It's a recognition that our current criminal justice system actually doesn't work for victims. And so victims choose to participate in restorative justice. And victims, we'll tell you the percentage, about 95%, are thrilled with the results of restorative justice. Thank you very much, NVRDC, for protecting elder victims and victims generally, including many women who are subject to domestic abuse and sexual abuse. Rachel Uzdan and her great group, Moms Demand Action and now Peace for DC, they put a lie to this notion that there needs to be a study about a crime plan. My goodness, those organizations and others have put forth winning crime plans for every year that I've been in office, 7 years. And I'm going to be very critical of the District of Columbia. It's my privilege to do that as a witness and as a tax-paying resident and as the Attorney General. For the first time, the district is putting together a crime plan. When in the last 7 years, the District of Columbia has seen increases in violent crime and homicides. What took you so long? I want to thank Aaron Finkelhausen, the OAG union lawyer. Let me tell you something. Not every Attorney General's office has a union in it. We have two, staff and lawyers. They make us better every day by constructive criticism and by our joining forces to keep people safe, try as best we can to get people paid so they can take care of their families, and support each other in delivering services for the District of Columbia. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Paula, from the staff union. SS, that's what I call Sandra Seegers, an angel of truth. And she don't mince words. I have seen that, and they have pierced my heart, and they've hurt my ego. But she tells you the truth. Meet the people where there are. There actually is a battle between good and evil. Let's listen to Sandra Seegers. Let's invest more in violence interruption. Let's hold other programs accountable, as Councilmember George and Christina Henderson want to, because every taxpayer dollar should be utilized well. The workforce development gentlemen, Daryl Goins and Michael Rowe, are you kidding me? And for the record, they're talking about 2 OAG employees, because we'd like to have more who could help on workforce development. And they're doing it from the angle of child custody support. Those are extraordinary men, and I appreciate their leadership beyond just getting themselves to where they need to be. They're reaching back and bringing dozens and dozens and dozens of men who want to be fathers with them. Thank you. My guy at the foster house, Mr. Staffa, much respect, don't have to repeat. Pretty much the same thing that was going on Congress Heights. In fact, many of the same wealthy donors, okay, right? Foster house owned by a church was doing the same business practice as Congress Heights. Let's talk about truth. Holly Funk, I'm just happy we were able to help you and your daughter. And we're human beings too. The truth is, we have our own colleagues who have family members and kids who don't know enough or may not be well enough to know that they need help. God bless you, Ms. Funk. Okay, I'll go to the testimony, and maybe we'll just try to keep it short so that we can fire questions at the Office of Attorney General. I should note that the Office of Attorney General has 2 statutory obligations. 1, to represent the District of Columbia in court. That also means to give advice to the agencies, the council and the mayor, who have their own lawyers. It's okay. And the second, which is what you heard about from the DC residents today, is to use the law to help people stand up for themselves by using the law and, yes, policy. We've not shied from that. All right. I'm going to acknowledge COVID-19, of course, and the devastation that it's wrought, but also the resilience that it's brought, certainly on the part of the Office of Attorney General, staff and lawyers, and DC residents. Please continue to hang in there, follow the science. All right. Let's see. Last year, we saved the district a lot of money. We brought in millions of dollars in recompense from wrongdoers, real bad wrongdoers, improved the services of district agencies responsible for protecting kids, and stopped harmful business practices that have hurt our families and our environment. In fiscal year 2021, we helped avoid $400 million in costs to the district by virtue of outstanding lawyering. We brought in almost $70 million from our affirmative litigation, collected more than $50 million in child support, and preserved nearly $40 million in tax revenue from people who didn't want to pay their full taxes. For example, we recovered $1.5 million from AT&T for overcharging the district for telecom services, secured $2.7 million from Apple for misleading consumers about software that intentionally slowed their cell phones. Just earlier this week, we won an important case defending the district's ability to paint Black Lives Matter on its street. We've also worked to protect children, elders, and vulnerable adults from exploitation. Boy, you've heard some of that today. This past year, these efforts included criminal prosecution of someone who swindled an elderly resident by securing a reverse mortgage on her home and using the funds for his own benefit. The prosecution was a direct result of OAG detailing a prosecutor to the U.S. Attorney's Office to pursue offenses that had long been neglected. On the civil side, we also sued a nursing assistant who stole from residents of the nursing homes where she worked. she had to reimburse those residents and pay another $65,000 in penalties. And we made sure that she lost her license so she couldn't work in a nursing home again. We've also trained district residents to recognize and report signs of human trafficking of youth, an issue that is not talked about enough. And of course, we've protected seniors from financial exploitation. While OAG's representation of the district and its residents is important, there is, of course, nothing more sacred than our responsibility to help keep our neighbors safe. This is particularly true now, as we're in the midst of an uptick in violent crime, impacting the district as well as other jurisdictions across our country. It's one of the most visible consequences of the pandemic. We know that. And I expect that we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about OAG's role as the prosecutor of law violations by children. I so look forward to having this conversation with you, Chairman Allen, because we know that in the conversation that has been had over the last 10 days, there's been a lot of misperception, false information, pointing of fingers, scapegoating. We're going to tell you the truth here. Here's the truth. Crime committed by children is just one consequence. That's the tip of the iceberg. Visible. Below the proverbial iceberg or tip is the proverbial iceberg. And those are deeper issues. Factors like trauma, poverty, financial instability, familial disability and dysfunction, lack of education and economic opportunity, and hopelessness. We got to get serious about prioritizing those needs. We have to get serious about actually implementing the delivery of services on each of those needs. And one of the most significant issues facing the District of Columbia is the lack, of course, of safe, affordable, and decent housing. We're fortunate the district is an attractive place that many people want to call home. But as new residents arrive and new buildings go up across the district, long-term residents, often Black, brown, senior, and low-income residents, folks with disabilities, are being priced out and pushed out. As I indicated earlier, the highest level of displacement in the United States of America. This is not displacement just by virtue of Adam Smith or market forces. Instead, it's caused by, amongst other things, a deliberate, illegal, and unethical business model. Slumlords in the District of Columbia. People that go into suites at all the games. Caps, Wizards. During my tenure, OAG has been laser focused on combating these business practices. And over the last year, we've achieved incredible results and expanded into new frontiers that can serve as a model nationally. How about that? DC is a national model in preserving and expanding housing affordability. Let me tell you about one of those successes, which dates back to 2016, Congress Heights. To get a real picture, you've got to go back to 2010, however. That's when 46 of the 47 units in the complex, that is Congress Heights, then, were fully occupied by residents, many of whom had lived at that property for generations. That year, in 2010, Sanford Capital purchased the property and immediately began withholding services. And in time, the units and common areas were in extreme disrepair and dangerous housing code violations, including vermin, mold, broken heat and plumbing, and other totally inhumane conditions were common. Fast forward to this litigation, only 10 residents remained while we were suing Sanford Capital. By the way, 46 out of 47 units, multiply that by 3 people, an average unit, about 120 people there, at least, maybe closer to 130, 140. Only 10 residents remain during our lawsuit against Sanford Capital, which is to say they almost got away with it. Their strategy was clear. neglect the property, and effectively force out the existing tenants. The goal was to redevelop the property into market rate housing and profit from the sale or rental of these units to new residents. Over the years, we stayed in this fight, standing alongside tenants, organizers, and their advocates, and they deserve a lot of credit. We successfully petitioned for appointment of a receiver to repair the property, fought back against the slumlord when it tried to circumvent the tenants' rights under the TOPA Act, and negotiated to bring our lawsuit and the tenants' lawsuit under TOPA to a close. Here's what happened when it came to a close. Landmark victory earlier this year for city partners. They're also in the Foster House deal. The new owners of the property in Sanford Capital's not-for-profit partner to sell the property to a real not-for-profit that the tenant selected. The tenant-led development will create, hold your horses, 179 units, all affordable. What was originally a 47-unit property will now have more than 3 times that number before the slumlord came in. Of the 179 units, 5% will be rented at 30% AMI, 75% will be rented at 50% AMI, and 20% will be rented at 80% AMI. Significantly, 35% of the units will have 2 and 3 bedroom apartments that can be used by families. The Congress Heights story is egregious, but unfortunately not unique. I'm not going to talk about Foster House owned by a church, but they were trying to do the same thing. I'm going to fast forward that. Keep going. Maybe there. So, what else can we do on housing? Let me tell you something. Part of the problem, the council members, is the way in which our zoning, Office of Planning, DEMPED, that entire process operates. It facilitates displacement. And so that's why OAG has now, can you go up a little bit? Yep, a little higher. A little higher. Okay, a little lower. Bingo, okay. That's why we've recently expanded our work by now changing the way in which we do land use and zoning at the Office of Attorney General. For years, we were restricted to providing legal advice to the Board of Zoning Adjustments and Zoning Commission, which inhibited our ability to really be fair and to advocate in the public interest. But last year, the legal advice function was moved to the Office of Zoning, which allows OAG's extremely talented land use lawyers to focus on advocating for the public interest. It's going to upset the apple cart, and that's a good thing. So this group is now expanding safe and affordable housing, increasing racial equity, and advancing environmental justice. Perhaps if we had been successful in pivoting sooner, we could have averted the displacement caused by Brooklyn Manor in Ward 5. As part of the new mission, OAG has filed several petitions for rule changes before the Zoning Commission to expand affordable housing, including requests to lower the income thresholds at which a family is eligible for affordable housing, require additional housing benefits when developers move affordable housing off-site, remove the inclusionary zoning exemption in the downtown area, meaning that new buildings there will not be exempted from the requirement that a certain number of units in the buildings be affordable and exempt affordable units from parking requirements. In the coming months, we'll also be participating in individual land use matters to advocate against big moneyed interest and for the public interest. To this end, we've been meeting with ANCs all over this city and other advocates to ensure that all residents, including vulnerable residents, actually have a chance to impact decisions that will affect their lives. Procedural equity is a new term. That's what is going to be brought by our efforts, because before, the process locked out poor and vulnerable residents. Not anymore. Beyond these efforts, OAG also successfully defended the eviction moratorium that the council properly enacted, helping residents facing the dual health and financial menaces created by COVID-19 to stay in their homes. And when we heard that many barriers that district residents face in accessing federal funds meant to help them pay their rent and utility bills were lagging because of improper implementation, clumsy implementation, what did we do? Our own team volunteered, got other volunteers, got office spaces and computers, and physically helped people complete their Stay DC applications, whether they knew how to use a computer, had the internet, or not. Let's move forward. These are but a few examples and of just a fraction of the work that we've undertaken to promote housing justice and maintain strong communities in the District of Columbia. The work actually takes courage and perseverance, and I'm proud of my colleagues for standing up to powerful interests to protect our most vulnerable residents. We've also, of course, stood up for workers. I'm not going to go at length here, but there's a problem called wage theft in the District of Columbia. It is rife. Whenever you see a crane for development with general contractors and a whole bunch of subs, there's wage theft. Employees are not getting paid what they earned because a lot of these companies are engaged in misclassifying them as independent contractors, saving these companies millions and millions of dollars at the expense of workers. And it's got to stop. And I really want to work with the council on innovative legislation to stop the practice. Not going to talk about a couple lawsuits that we've just brought against a wage theft. Why don't we just go to our suit to defend democracy and combating hate. Mr. Chairman, I was so proud to have you by our side because you've been an extraordinary partner, not only in everything that we've done, but also in combating hate. I know your values, sir, and I respect them. And that's why we sued the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and over 3 dozen hate mongers who hurt our police officers, over 800 of whom came to the defense of the U.S. Capitol, 3 of whom, after January 6th, have died by suicide. So we're suing hate, and we're suing the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and those racial hate mongers and anti-Semitics, because that's what DC should do. Keep going. We're wrapping up. Let me just say, 2 days ago was a day of mixed emotions at the Office of Attorney General. We have so many talented people. They literally come, make massive contributions, and then they go out and do other great things. And so our Solicitor General, Lauren Alican, the best Solicitor General in America, is now going to be on the DC Court of Appeals. But I want to tell you, the Solicitor General's office not only defends the district, the appellate level in court, the most powerful SG office in the country, including the feds, fighting for voting rights all throughout this country through powerful amicus briefs. I sure hope that the office continues its commitment to core issues and continues to recruit extraordinary talent and people who have heart and courage. Now we're going to talk about crime. I have to say, I know in the 100 yards, if the Office of Attorney General and all of its work could be characterized as a 100-yard football field, what's been attempted in the last 2 weeks is to have the Office of Attorney General only talk about 5 or 10 yards, the hard stuff. Don't talk about the 90%, the stuff that benefits real people. But we're also happy to talk about the hard stuff. So what we seek to do at OAG, when you talk about crime, is to hold wrongdoers accountable. We're going to be unabashed in this. We also seek to help victims, help them heal. We also seek, and we will until I leave, to work to rehabilitate kids who break the law. And of course, as Sandra Seegers saw, we also seek to interrupt violence before it happens. And our approach has not been traditional. We rely, working with you, Mr. Chairman, on creative, evidence-based approaches that reduce recidivism. When you reduce the likelihood that somebody who causes harm is going to do it again, you've made the public more safe. Is there a guarantee that anything you do that is creative and evidence-based will ensure that that person does not create harm? The simple truth is no. But as the committee knows, the Office of Attorney General has jurisdiction over certain misdemeanors committed by adults. We would love, of course, to have a lot more jurisdiction, including in the area of public integrity, because we have a problem in the District of Columbia government around public integrity. DC Housing Authority. Let's talk again about adults and juvenile crime. MPD arrests adults because we lack statehood. The U.S. Attorney's Office, a federal entity, prosecutes adults in superior and federal court. Let me put this in complete, proper, and full and honest context. In 2020, I'm old. In 2020, less than 7% of arrests in the District of Columbia were of juveniles. That means that 93% of the arrests around crime were for adults. Notwithstanding our limited jurisdiction, as you know, Mr. Chairman, my team and I have sought to have the broadest impact we can on public safety. We've worked with MPD to build stronger cases, appreciate the partnership, invested in programs to address truancy. We've heard about that today. Work with district agencies to connect children with services, including intensive mental health services, met with and supported victims of crime every day, and developed evidence-based initiatives, diversion, restorative justice, cure the streets, to reduce violence and ensure that kids get the services they need to get back on the right track. And finally, we work with every agency, federal, local, the courts, the Public Defender Service, the council, as well as the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council on which you sit, to address gaps in our criminal justice system. This has been a challenging couple of years for everyone, and COVID-19 has exacerbated the issues that drive crime. So we're seeing violent crime go up all over the country, or I should say in many parts of the country, including right here in the district. It's been an especially hard time for anyone who knows kids. You know how hard this COVID-19 time has been on children. Schools and after-school activities, a huge problem in the District of Columbia. Schools need counselors, mental health counselors. We need to invest more in out-of-school time. These schools and programs have been closed. Families are already on the brink, and they're pushed to poverty and homelessness. Mental health challenges have been exacerbated. It's been harder to get services to children and families who need them the most. These effects have been felt hardest in low-income communities and have been concentrated in communities east of the river. But, as Councilmember Louis George said, there is no refuge. Crime doesn't know a border, doesn't know a wall, doesn't know a ward. The violence will extend everywhere. And while violent crime by children in the District of Columbia has actually decreased in the last 2 years, one violent offense, carjackings, have increased. And people are rightly afraid. And they're asking their leaders, and I'm one of them, and I should be held accountable too. What are you doing to keep us safe? Today, we're going to have an honest conversation about juvenile crime. Again, less than 7% of all arrests in the District of Columbia are juveniles. We'll not do what others have done with the megaphones, the press conferences, and the like, and talk about anecdotes and generalizations. Instead, We're going to look at the facts and the data. Please bear with me. From fiscal years, what I'm now talking about, from 2019 to 2021, juvenile crime that the Metropolitan Police Department brought has decreased by 51%. From 2019 to 2021, violent juvenile crime that the Metropolitan Police Department has presented to us decreased by 46%. The Office of Attorney General, of course, takes violent offenses, including involving weapons, seriously, and we prosecute those cases. Facts. OAG prosecuted 86.7% of gun possession cases, presented by MPD. Fact. OAG prosecuted or approved warrants or custody orders in 71.8% of the carjacking matters presented by MPD. Fact. OAG prosecuted or approved of warrants or custody warrants in 65.7% of cases involving crimes of violence that MPD brought to us. Now, focusing on carjacking, frightening. MPD has told the press, the mayor standing right by there, and the public, that it has received 452 reports of carjacking in 2021. They've only made 149 arrests. Now let's focus on juvenile carjacking cases that MPD has referred to our office. In 2020, MPD presented 56 carjacking cases to OAG. Here comes a real big increase. In 2021, nearly 3 times that, just about 3 times that. MPD presented 158 carjacking cases. We agree. It's a big problem in carjacking. In 2021, there were 108 youth with a carjacking case who were presented to the Office of Attorney General. Let's look back at the 108 children charged in 2021 and ask a question. How many of those children had a prior carjacking offense? I'm not going to give you an anecdote or a story. I'm just going to tell you the facts. 8 of those children had prior carjacking charges. That's 7%. 16, or 14.8%, have since been arrested for another carjacking charge. These aren't anecdotes or stories, those are facts. The rate of recidivism that we saw in the data prompted us to develop further strategies to prosecute carjackings and to protect people. We did not have a press conference last year when we went over to meet with Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy to hammer out a deal to share and receive detailed information about our joint investigations. Kids steal cars from Prince George's, come into DC, create havoc. They steal cars from DC, go into Prince George's County, create havoc. What are we doing as prosecutors? We're talking about the kids, the evidence. Who's got the strongest evidence? Well, then you prosecute. Hey, here's our evidence. You need to use it? Yes. Hey, is there a kid who needs to be held? Do you need other evidence? We've got evidence that this kid really should be held. That's been going on for over a year. And importantly, in cases involving repeat offenders, because we read those stats, there are repeat offenders, certainly not as much as some would have you believe, but every repeat offender means that there's a victim that didn't need to be a victim. I agree. So what do our lawyers do in court? They ask for and oftentimes get detention. And because we have a statutory mandate to provide kids with services, we require that services be provided. Let me be clear. When the police bring us enough evidence to prove these cases, as our numbers show, we prosecute them, all of them. We don't divert them. We prosecute them. With respect to our broader prosecutorial and justice philosophy, you're not going to get an apology from me. The people elected the philosophy twice. Go check the margin of victory out. When we receive a case, we look at all the tools in our toolbox to determine how to do right by the victim of the crime and how to keep the child from committing further crime. And so we scour the country. We go overseas to identify the best evidence-based approaches to reducing recidivism. Let me talk about a few of these approaches. Diversion, in which we've partnered with the administration and Hillary Cairns, who's now running DYRS, I believe will do an excellent job. For the lowest level juvenile cases involving low-risk youth, we seek to keep them out of the juvenile system and instead provide them with high-quality treatment services. Extensive research shows that youth who penetrate the juvenile system compared to those diverted, guess what, have worse outcomes for recidivism, high school graduation, and employment. Why would you direct kids into a system that gives them worst potential outcomes? For recidivism, that's just doing a crime again, graduating from high school, and employment. We're not going to do that. OAG partners closely, as I said, with the ACE diversion program. Give the administration credit. ACE had consistently higher rates of success with these youth. Nearly 80% of those kids diverted have not been rearrested within 2 years of completing the program. Give the administration credit for partnering with the Office of Attorney General. Hillary Cairns. Restorative justice. The first ever prosecutorial office in the United States of America to host an in-house restorative justice program, which includes cognitive behavioral therapy. Research and early internal data demonstrate that programs like this reduce recidivism of young people and in turn keep the community safer. But guess what? We want to be sure. That's why we've commissioned and will pay for a rigorous outside study of our program to determine its effectiveness. Maybe that's why the Department of Justice gave us almost as much money, Mr. Chairman, as you did to expand restorative justice, Cure the Streets. In 2018, we proposed the Cure the Streets program. To you and with council support, it's now been operating in 6 target areas. While violent crime has increased in the District of Columbia over the last 7 years, including homicides, it's increased at a lower rate in cure target areas. And Sandra Seegers knows this. Given that these target areas were chosen because they had the highest rates of gun violence, it's actually quite an accomplishment. Partnering with MPD, I want to thank the Metropolitan Police Department for partnering with us to change one of their MPD orders to allow us to have increased coordination with officers on the ground to strengthen prosecution and keep guns off our streets. We staff literally a 24/7 hotline where we advise officers on how to handle interaction with juvenile suspects. We also advise them on what evidence to collect and investigatory steps to take in order to make sure that we have the strongest cases, that we can be afforded the opportunity to close a prosecution. We also have to address, of course, the proliferation of guns in the district. I'll be really quick here. The District of Columbia is awash in guns. There are now these ghost guns, and the police have been talking about it. The Office of Attorney General has been talking about it. When our Department of Forensic Services was up and running, a big problem in the District of Columbia that has not gotten the attention that it deserves, except I know that you've held hearings in this committee. The press should cover the fact that the Department of Forensic Services is shut down. Members of the press, you should cover the fact that the Department of Forensic Services now has to go about and review every piece of evidence: guns, bullets, DNA, fingerprint that was used to convict anyone by guilty plea or conviction since at least 2014. That means, because of the Department of Forensic Services incompetence, that means that there are people likely in DC jail who maybe were not actually the wrongdoer. It also definitely means there are wrongdoers who escaped prosecution and punishment because the Department of Forensic Services doesn't know what they're doing and has been shut down. I want to say one last thing. Executive Office of the Mayor knew this 2 years ago, did nothing. That deserves accountability. Anyway, ghost guns are bad. We sued the nation's largest ghost gun maker, Polymer 80, so that they cannot send their poisonous ghost guns into the District of Columbia. I'm going to wrap up really soon. Give it to me, please. Just go to the conclusion. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, DC residents, I cannot tell you how proud I am of the work of my colleagues, lawyers, and professionals this year and the last 6 before. I want to thank the council for providing resources and support. Mr. Chairman, you have been extraordinary. This testimony only covers a small bit of that 100-yard field of work that is the Office of Attorney General. I really appreciate this opportunity to reflect on the work that we've done. I look forward to identifying opportunities to continue our work. Everyone at the Office of Attorney General is committed to making the coming year our strongest yet. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to answer any questions that you might have.